Daniel Mark from the CEC, Daniel from the Innovation Center, Andre.
The Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. So
Fantastic. It's 4 p.m. and we will call the community June 6th meeting of the Environmental Sustainability Committee of the Corporation of Sault Ste. Marie. And I acknowledge with respect that we are on Robinson Huron Treaty territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bovating. Bovating is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batawana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Looking for, with regards to the adoption of the minutes of our last meeting, which was April 4th, for someone to move and second the approval of those minutes, please. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Tobin. Mark to move, Tobin to second. Any questions, comments, additions, deletions, errors? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of those minutes? That is carried. Thank you. For declaration of community interest, we do have one already declared. Mark Britton, who is an employee of the Public Utilities Commission, Sault Ste. Marie, has a conflict with the vehicle charging project funding request. Are there any other declarations today? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to adoption of today's agenda. Could I have someone to move and second the agenda today? Thank you, Councillor Gardy, and to second, thank you, Andre. Anything to add or any questions, concerns? Being none, all in favor of adoption of today's agenda is carried. We have three, on item 6, we have 3 applications, yay, for our Community Development Fund Green Initiatives Program. And I'm going to ask Melanie to take us through the introduction, etc., of the 6.1, which is the first one, which is from the Tourism Department. Thank you, Alana, for being here. Clear Your Gear project funding.
Thanks, Donna. So we guests with us today. We have Noah, manager of tourism from the city of Sault Ste. Marie, as well as Alita and Hugh from Parks Canada. Thanks so much for joining us. So the application has come in from the tourism department, and they are looking to support Parks Canada by installing 7 Clear Your Gear fishing line recycling receptacles on canal property at Whitefish Island National Historic Site. These will provide a safe, environmentally friendly way to collect and recycle discarded fishing line in high impact fishing areas. Clear Your Gear is a Canadian company specializing in fishing line receptacles. Improperly discarded fishing line can last in the environment up to 600 years and is the leading cause of entanglement issues for people, property, and wildlife. By providing convenient and accessible locations for use and discarded fishing lines to be properly disposed of, the river will see reduced amounts of ghost line and waterways and shorelines. Protect wildlife habitats in the area, and waste line will be recycled as well as keeping it from entering the landfill. The company Clear Your Gear recycles the fishing line materials to create fish habitats. This project aligns with the improved water quality, healthy and resilient ecosystems, and waste reduction pillars of the Green Initiatives Fund. I'm going to turn it over to Lana. If there's anything else you would like to add, as well as for an overview of your instructions. They've seen the application, and then we'll turn it over to them for any questions. Anything to add on? Perfect.
Yeah, you know what I wanted to add, this has been something that tourism has identified for years, that as we continue to promote our destination as a high yield tourism locations in the St. Marie River Rapids, we're seeing an increase in visitors looking to come and fish in this area. And what's happening is we're continuing to see the overflow of wasteland in the rapids. So we know that this is a problem that can increase. Tourism stands behind environmental capability when it comes to promoting fishing. And this is a project that we're really excited to see. I'll turn it over to Parks Canada. They've been working diligently to put this into action. So I'll turn it over. If you want to.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just say, as the rapids are such a
prominent fishing area, in the Sioux and visiting. We see kind of firsthand the impact on wildlife, specifically, or just entanglement in the environment. So having a safe, convenient area where we can dispose of this, and not only just dispose of it properly, but also that it can be recycled and then turned into a fish habitat. I think is a really positive thing. And if anyone's curious of where we would like to put them, I have the map here. But we are very much looking forward to that. We're also working cooperatively with that conversation, because the majority of the period here, is that kind of looking on the fishing and closest to that. And Parks Canada at, I give lots of props to Kaylee, because she's done a lot of the research, but Rouge, Urban National Park in Toronto also uses this at one of their locations and has had lots of success with it. So that's kind of how it came into our purview and that's where something like that. So we've been trying to solve this problem for quite some time. So we're really excited to support tourism initiative, and we'll be taking care of the receptacles. So we'll be, along with that conversation, we'll be emptying recycles, and Parks Canada will be taking care of mailing it back to the here, so it gets recycled properly.
Okay, questions? Andre?
I'm not a fisher, so, but I did, but I kid. So when there are people who fish, but their lines break and then they focus. They just like, or how does that work? So how is that when the fisher have a line that's broken? Typically, if it was me, I would put it in my pocket or in my back and take it home. And you see if there's a garbage can there, I put it in the garbage can. Just wondering how effective this will be. How are you going to be able to monitor the effectiveness? Because I'm just thinking that a lot of fishers will break the line. They basically either they lost it in the river, which happened, and they're definitely not going to get that one. And that a lot of the entanglement, you come from that kind of fishing line debris, and you're not going to capture this happen. So I'm just being the devil's advocate and trying to find out is it a problem you can fix with this? Is it going to make an impact? And if you're able to monitor that, that would be awesome. Because I think if you're collecting it, as opposed to put it in the garbage can, recycling fishing line, I don't know how well that works either, because I know a lot of recyclables end up in the landfill. It's just not high market. Recycling certain plastics, things like that. It really works for our next program. So I'm just, yeah. So do you have any comments?
I can speak to that. Sure. So you're right, Andre. That's one way that fishing line gets broken is just by getting snagged and then you lose that line. The larger issue stems from because of the amount of rock on the bottom of the rapids. As you're fishing and fly fishing, your line's going like this, so it's wearing down. So they'll strip the line, hundreds of feet, strip that line, toss it, put new bait on the end.
In the water.
Well, it's not supposed to,
Yeah.
but that's what happens. You're not just talking about 20 or 30
Yeah,
feet
yeah,
of
yeah.
line. You're talking about hundreds of feet of line that's getting used and abused in the rapids. So then that then starts to accumulate into these like nesting type piles.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. It's awful. I have it on my beach, but the point is that if you can let us know, we approve your I would be really interested to know how much is that. Because one of the concerns is that there is, I know at Hiawatha Park, we have an issue with what we call sign pollution. Like everybody, like we plant trees, we put posts in the ground, we've got a sign here, a sign there, and basically the way we address pollution is actually part of the problem. So if we have receptacles there all over the place, people will write on them and vandalize them and kick them and whatever, and then you collect no fishing line, then you can remove that. It's not a big amount of money, but I'm just saying, I just wanted to make sure that we're not creating more visual pollution in an area that we're trying to keep as natural.
Sure, yeah, no, that's just a very valid point. I think that's really Kelly talked to the folks at the Rouge National Urban Park in the Toronto area, and they've done a lot of analysis on their program. So maybe Kelly, you can kind of give an idea of what Rouge experienced with theirs.
Yeah, so
specifically Rouge National Urban Park placed their fishing line receptacles at Rouge Beach, which is located right on the border of Pickering and Scarborough, which is a very popular space for people to go fishing. And I don't think that they've, calculated how much specifically maybe in weight or volume. I'm not sure how we might measure that, although that's to explore. They haven't taken that step as far as I understand. For the vandalism, you know what though, where your gear might, this is their whole purpose, is to take recycled fishing line and recycle it into fish habitat. So they may have a way of tracking it.
Well, for sure, if you put it all in garbage can, you collect it.
Yeah.
If you fill it and you got like, you collect 5 bags full, that's a lot, and you can actually measure that, so. That would be good to know, because I just want to make sure that we are effective.
Yeah.
And that we are not adding things to the environment that don't.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I would also just wanted to touch on your vandalism point as well, as Scarborough also experiences a lot of vandalism.
Yes.
That has not been an issue. In fact, a lot of people have been very receptive to it, acknowledging kind of the benefit over just tossing it in a garbage can, which is directly beside it, right? So I just wanted.
And I think with the recycling of specific plastics, because it's going back directly to the facility that these fishing line disposals are coming from, and they are responsible for recycling like Katie said, their purpose to recycle this specific product, and that they're making fish habitat. I think it's a win-win here.
Sorry, I'll also just say that as we'll be collecting material that's deposited into these receptacles, we do have things that we're looking at for, like we're not sending them lures or specific kinds of fishing line that they're not able to recycle. So just to know that we'll do everything we can on our end to ensure that they're getting material that is recycled.
Anyone else with questions? Mark?
Yeah, just, I guess, on the communication piece to it.
Yeah.
So do you look at reaching not only, maybe not just signage, but also reaching out to the fishing community and
Yeah.
just to let them know, I guess, that here's an avenue for, instead of rolling the line through your pocket or it ends up with trash, here's a receptacle for it. Is there a plan, I guess, to reach out and communicate with that community?
I'm happy to speak to that. That's actually what I was chiming in on. Through our department, we have wonderful relationships with the guides that are in rapids. So we've had conversations with them previously. So they'll be leaders in the rapids to be able to lead the way. And then through our communication channels, we'll continue to promote the receptacle as opportunities for people to be. They'll also know what to do with it. And that just ends up, it's unfortunate that they just do that. So we will be very diligent in helping communicate and partnering with Parks Canada and the community to be able to do that. And I know Bachelor Station also expressed that they will continue just to push that message around as well. So I think between all of those different angles, we should be able to get it up there.
I'll also just say that we have preliminary plans of when we created the actual appropriation that will go along with this, but having staff members actually approaching fishermen who are staging in the parking lots, and just showing them what the device is going to look like so that they know what to look for and how to properly use it and what it's for. So I think that kind of boots on the ground communication with the actual people that are going into places should be effective as well.
Right.
And eliminate the need for additional signs.
Anyone else with questions?
For the states figure like collection rate, I think I'm missing, or I don't really know.
Oh, yeah, there isn't a picture, but it kind
There's
of,
a picture.
oh, there is?
In the application.
Oh, sorry, okay, yeah. It's kind of looks like a curved piece of, kind of PVC piping essentially. And, yeah, they just kind of stick it in the top of the curved piece, and then on the bottom is where we be able to collect the material that is through it. Yeah.
I just wasn't sure. So, but like the 4 locations, they all, like they're on the, actual on the side of.
So I think 3 of them, or yeah, 3 locations, which we chatted with them. As well, maybe.
We have an MOU, right?
Yes, we have a working MOU with National First Nation.
With like the environment.
Yeah, with the whole thing, like with the find,
Like, we met with the-
yeah, two stairs, yeah. And signed the MOU, but that's for just our overall working relationship with Bechuana. We work very closely with the I don't want to call it the plant department, but their maintenance side, the folks that do come and do maintenance on like Fish Island. And communicate with them regularly, so yeah, they're aware of the.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. But my question to you is about this, it said something about the line is recycled. Meaning fish habitat.
Yes.
Can you describe?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know a whole lot of the specific processes of what Clear Your Gear produces. I imagine it's a host of different products that are then used kind of in more natural settings for fish habitats. I'm not sure what their specific process is, and it's separate.
That's-
Anyone else with a question? I have a couple. Oh, Nairi's gone. Oh, my apologies, Nairi. You go ahead, Jeremy.
Actually a question for Emily. I was just curious, how much do we have left in the fund and how much in total is being requested from all the proposals today? Just for context.
Okay, so as of without looking at these projects right now, we have approximately, based on what we were allocated this year, the 50,000 that we were allocated this year, we have approximately 25,000 left. If we approve these 3 projects, we'll have approximately $149 left in the fund for this year. I am working with our finance department to understand if there might be a bit more in a reserve. We're just sorting some things out. So hopefully we'll have those numbers for our next meeting. And the reserve could be accessed for other projects with permission from council. But if we don't, any money left over from this year will go towards tree planting on city property in the coming year.
Okay, thanks. And just one other, I was having a little bit of a hard time hearing some people, but that's okay. I think I got the gist of it. I think Andre was asking about the impact, and it just came to mind, you know, in other areas, you see these like plastic boxes of all of the stuff that we've collected from, you know, the shore or whatever it is. You see all the garbage, and just an idea, but that's all that I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Nairi. 2 questions. 1, what's the lifespan of these receptacles?
Oh, like how long will they last?
Yes, yeah.
They're plastic, correct?
Yeah, I'm honestly not too sure. Rouge has had them installed for 3 years, and they haven't had to replace them. So longer than that.
Is there a plan in place if you had to replace them? Like if they were damaged beyond use or anything like that, is there funds available to keep the, this is buying 7, I think you're installing 7, so you don't have spares, or is there a plan to be able to replace if it's needed?
Not that we've discussed.
I'm sure that it will, as we continue with the program, we will need to.
Okay, I think that would be important for the committee to understand. And then lastly, it doesn't sound like, based on what I'm hearing or what I've read, that you have a baseline to start from, correct? You don't have any sense of how much line is going in the garbage now or anything like that to compare it to?
No, we have not been tracking.
Okay,
So I can tell you that every year we have issues with wildlife. And
Yeah.
okay.
every year.
So knowing what you know, how will you know if you're successful?
I think it'll take a couple of years to track with the communication piece that we'll work on with the Birds and Safari, as well as Oklahoma Country. Because they also have fishing is a large part of their programming as well. Getting the information out to the fishermen and then seeing the effectiveness of the receptacles being used. maybe a decline in wildlife, interactions. That's where we see the garbage, yet our staff takes care of it, but I think the big thing is when we see the geese and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that, for sure.
I think there's two sides to this as well. There's the waste part of it where we're seeing the line that's just started on the shoreline. But there's a second element to this where if it's keeping the fishing line out of the trash cans. So even the folks that are, bringing their line home, they're just discarding it home in their garbage can. So this is keeping that portion out of landfill sites and going in for recycling. So I think there's two sides here that help. One good way to measure it is we have to send everything back for recycling. So just a volume-based measurement will be able to say we've been able to, keep out X number of pounds or however you want to measure it volume-wise, out of landfill.
And I think this year would be our base year. And I would think it's-
So just to make it clear, of course, we haven't voted yet, or we haven't approved yet, but to make it clear that it's important to keep track so that you can brag about
Right.
what a great investment this was and what it is. Any further questions? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's right?
Yes.
I think the modest investment on our part, funding, I think whatever we can do to divert plastics from the river is great. So I appreciate them concerned about volume and tracking and everything else, which I think is important. Many themselves with on it, where we need to kind of brag about it, but I think.
That being said, Councilor Darty, I have someone to move in second approval of the application. Councilor Darty and Sullivan Kern. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
There you go. Okay, moving on, the next application, I believe is the one for the charging stations, correct? So I believe you have to ask her to,
You can stay, you just
You
can't
can
vote.
it's, oh, okay, remember, there you go.
Is he allowed to answer?
No, it's
No.
only if it's enclosed.
Yeah,
You
okay,
have to be.
okay, all right, thank you for that clarification on the. Wait.
Great, so, the city's community development and enterprise services department is looking to initiate the installation of electric vehicle charging infrastructure for the city's light duty fleet. This project seeks to install 2 single head level 2 electric vehicle chargers at the Civic Center, 99 Prospect Drive here, in the south parking lot near the engineering fleet, nearest to the St. Mary's River, and closest to Montana's rest. It is anticipated that this project will help drive momentum forward on the city's light duty fleet emissions reduction efforts by offering an understanding of the costs associated to installing charging infrastructure, which will support future city budget. This project aligns with the GHG reduction pillar of the Green Initiatives Fund, and it also aligns with the city council resolution that was passed in 2021 that mandated EV replacement on a go-forward basis for all light-duty vehicles as they reach end of life. To this date, we haven't purchased a light-duty vehicle, so having infrastructure to help make that transition is a logical step. So with that, if there's any questions, please go ahead and ask.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions. Like the request we had for the electric lawnmowers fire department. How do we, like the money that we have, when is something part of an operational expense versus something that our committee, because when you open that door, have special light bulb, but this is what we do it free. It shouldn't be coming to this committee. To me, this particular thing is capital expenditure, not something, but again, Emily, you're the one who, in terms of reference, maybe Donna, I don't know, but it feels like this is in that gray zone where we open that door and then next thing you know, there's gonna be a request for the card itself or a request for other green things, because it's, you can, so much is, and I think as a committee, we need to decide the limited amount of money we have. And tell the department, say, listen, guys, put this in your budget, because that's going, in the future, you're buying electric cars, period. You know what? Buy an electric car, you gotta figure out how you're gonna charge it. Where you're gonna charge it and how you're gonna pay for it.
I'm gonna ask, Travis has indicated that he'd like to answer that.
Yeah.
question.
So valid point. I think what it comes down to, so the Green Committee before it transitioned to the Environmental Sustainability Committee, the funding that was associated, that was dedicated to city departments. You know, often what happens is a department may bring a list of projects that they want to do. And as council, mayor and council go through the budgetary process or even finance, they start removing those projects so that we can achieve a certain percent increase within the levy. So it's not necessarily that city departments aren't budgeting for them. It's at times they're not getting through the budget process. So being able to come to the ESC for requests such as this allows staff to advance and take one more step closer to getting those EV vehicles. So I appreciate where you're coming from, and I understand it completely, but the staff departments don't always have the money to execute. what they
Yeah, well,
want.
neither do we, that's.
Yeah,
May I think that, and ask you to comment?
Yeah, so. I'll stand to be corrected by Travis around, but I think Andre raises a valid point. And I think, through efforts like Emily's position and the work that Emily's been doing, kind of influence staff writ large as to the importance of, green initiatives and climate impact being kind of one of our pillars broadly throughout everything that comes to council, right? And of course, I think you'll see on a go forward basis, Andre, not as many of these things come to this committee, at least that's my hope. And I think as referenced in the report, this is something that kind of gives us some infrastructure to start to follow through on some of these commitments that we have confidently made. But I would suspect the efforts of Emily and Trav, some members of council, were committed to moving these issues forward that we hopefully won't see these sort of responses this bodies adopting that they think or they need money coming. I reserve my comments as related to Parks Canada because I could have said I was going to say that the last item. It's a great effort, $1,700. Parks Canada can put up a couple of plastic things, but fishing line, you know what I mean? But anyway, so the same sort of school of thought, different level of government, but yeah.
Oh, then you had a question.
I just wanted to clarify, are the charging stations going to be for city vehicles?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's not for public, it's for civic.
Okay.
Wanted to add one. What am I saying? So this comment that's been brought forward has come up before. So I won't jump again, this is a whole other agenda item. But one of the priority projects that this committee has selected to work on this year is to take a look at the terms and reference of the Green Initiatives Fund and revise. So take these ideas, these comments, and hold on to them. We have our July meeting. That's when we're going to open it up for everybody to share their 2 cents. Because we'd like to revise this process of the Green Initiatives Fund, make it more streamlined, more efficient, but also bear in mind, we have applications coming from the city, but we also want to support local community nonprofit projects as well. What are some things that we should consider to ensure, adequate distribution? We want to consider intake rounds, that we have, a bunch and everybody's sort of given a specific time, but it's very finite fund. It's only $50,000. So we don't want to go and create so much red tape that it's possible, but it's going to be one of the tasks that the committee works on this, to finesse for future
Thank you.
I just wanted, did you ask your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Andrew and then Andre.
Yeah, so, I also, thought this was great, concerning reasons. I'm not sure. But remembers for the, electric vehicles at charging station, how is that practice use for the city of Vaughan, and I'm not sure how many vehicles, I didn't read it thoroughly enough to find out. But, the other thing is, you know, like EV, obviously, methane, for vehicles, whatever, and the problem with that is that they all take rare economic meals, and there are means from like the ring of fire, over the next 50 years, which will have to be clear cut in the area for the society. And so, I don't know that, like, I don't have the information about how much carbon emissions the vehicles of the city are currently producing, which I think is important information, because I think we should calculate how much the electric vehicles that are going to be purchased, probably like what it costs, especially because technology is not there, and what that replacement cost is going to be in terms of the production of those vehicles and the production of the greenhouse gases to produce those vehicles, and how long it's going to take for the offsetting for these vehicles with this electric charging station. The other thing was that I think we denied recently.
It was for the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy. They applied for money for 3 shoreline.
Right, so like, when I was reading the other documents, I noticed that a lot of the funding has gone to the city, is funding, or has gone to the city, maybe it's gone to the city. And in our one of the previous meetings, you had said that they didn't reach their targets by more than 10%.
The corporation is 10% above. Our emissions are 10% higher than our baseline. So we've gone up 10%.
Right, so like you didn't reach the goal, right? Not you.
Yeah, our goal is 10% reduction in emissions by 2030. And we based it on our baseline in 2017. And so we aren't even close.
Right, not, and a lot of people are not. Well, I mean, it's like they promise that, oh, in the future, because we're going to need this station and that's how much it's going to cost, whatever. There's a bunch of Whitefish Island and trade that those. I'll see how personally, it's not part of the budget, especially if that's the goal, and if we're denying people for shoreline, for like $5,000. Seems a little bit.
That was very different though, because they were paying a board member that was concerned over conflict versus.
Fair enough. I mean, to me, I also interest to have the city applying for the environmental sustainability committee for funds, which, you know, could go towards like shoreline cleanup, or, you know, maybe spending $5,000 to go check out how much of the fishing line is in the water over there, because they didn't really say how much is in there. They just said it's in there. I've never seen it.
So Andrew, it's not a conflict, but once again, I'm gonna ask Travis or Councilor Gardy, whoever you think, to address.
And I have a couple
And
comments.
thank you. So. How to move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like I said with Andre, I acknowledge the concerns and certainly wish that we had more in the budget to implement initiatives such as these. We don't at this point. I think this is a stepping stone that allows us, you know, it's one more barrier to remove that would allow us to transition to EVs. I appreciate your comments about should, and I would put that with very strong emphasis, should the Ring of Fire ever be developed. You know, certainly there's a life cycle analysis there, but you have to look at it on a global fleet basis rather than just these particular vehicles. So, you know, from our standpoint, at this point in time, EVs will allow us to move in the right direction in terms of achieving our goals of the 10% reduction, and certainly something that we would see the city take steps towards. And as I said, you know, to me, this removes one more barrier of the process to get us in that direction.
Is that because you've done the numbers in terms of the car, like the emissions of the current vehicle?
Emily has.
Okay, so when it comes to our corporate emissions, like if you picture that as like a pie chart, the majority of our emissions come from our corporate transportation. So fleet, so buses, cars, garbage trucks, anything that uses gasoline or diesel.
Is that the flights of staff?
It includes the mileage for travel for staff when they're traveling, and the consumption of gasoline and diesel for our actual vehicle assets. When it comes to the carbon emission reduction from charger for 2 light duty vehicles, it is a drop in the bucket in comparison to a bus or something that consumes diesel, like a large, like when you break it down, our biggest are public works and transit. Those are our biggest emitters. So we're talking about the city's engineering fleet, which has between 9 and 12 light duty vehicles. So from a scope 2, so those emissions specifically are what we're looking at. We've had preliminary discussions about embodied carbon life cycle from like the extraction of resources, et cetera. But when you look at the emissions reduction target that we're focusing on, it's scope 2, and it has to do with, you know, what we're purchasing, the energy that we're using, those fossil fuels, et cetera. And so, as Travis said, this is a stepping stone to get there. To get buses electrified. Oh, I see there's really slow. So we also currently don't have any like policies or rules when it comes to purchasing that look at things like you're bringing forward, like the life cycle. So the extraction of the minerals, the raw materials to develop the batteries that are going into electric vehicles, chargers, et cetera. But these are certainly things that are addressed in our greenhouse gas reduction plan. This is a plan that was approved in 2020. We're moving forward. It's been around 3 years now. And we had that as like a goal to start looking at after, I think, between 3 to 5 years. So it's time for us to start looking at that and taking that holistic approach to everything beyond just looking at the operational emissions from vehicles, et cetera. So these are good points. It is a process here.
Yeah, okay. So like in the future, you're going to consider the production electric vehicles as part of the valuation you're making in terms of the reduction. You're saying
We currently don't, or what we're thinking on scope 2. I think it would be valuable if we get direction to look at like beyond what we're currently looking at, as well as our targets. You know, our targets are you know a starting point, but they certainly could be valuable. Thanks, Andrew.
Nairi. And then I'll come back to you, Wondering. Nairi?
Yeah, so I just have a comment about the location of the stations. Just because I've heard a couple of places around town that have these charging stations have had vandalism where they've cut the cords to like try and sell the copper inside the cords. And so I was just wondering if maybe a more prominent location would be a better idea for safety.
So when we were looking at the potential site at the City Hall, which is where we keep our engineering fleet, the site location specifically was selected because it's so close to the transformer. So it's easy, like all of the wiring, et cetera. As part of the project proposal, there is going to be the building of a fence to act as a buffer from the snow in the wintertime. And the city does have security that is, you know, there's cameras, et cetera, around the building. So we do have that will be addressing those concerns.
Thanks.
Okay, cool question. So you were talking in your assessment of the city's emissions. Right now, it's from shale type, but you're supposed to go, it's got to include life cycle.
I'll need direction to do that.
Okay.
Currently, we are looking at scope 2 emissions.
Right.
We have started some preliminary discussions looking at things like embodied carbon. So
Yeah.
the carbon that it takes to, everything from the extraction of the natural resource to building it. Yeah, so say it's wood put into a building, then when you decommission that building, where does that go? Does it go to the land? So we've had some preliminary discussions, but certainly if this municipality would like to really understand all scopes of emissions, direction to staff would need to be provided.
So just to totally, I have to think about the grant applications of pursuing. There are a lot of implications for environmental and equity implications around that. So I share those concerns as well. I'm also wondering if, for me, that if I were to vote on this now, I would say I'd vote in favor of it. Simply because I'd like to see, not that I'm opposed to electric vehicles, but I would like to see a partnership. So maybe it's a finance line, there'll be a commitment from the city finance 70%. So maybe a revised ask. And something that I would
Just to
support that.
clarify, we are getting, you're working with the on this project, and if you read the application, I'll just clarify
Thank you.
two
Yeah.
things. One is, this project is eligible for Natural Resources Canada Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or VEVA. So $10,000 of the total project cost will be compensated by the federal government. So there is support from a funding standpoint on that regard. The second piece is, as mentioned in the application, this project is a good, or as Travis said as well, a good building block, if you will. I think it's a good pilot, straw dog, whatever you want to call it, to understand what does it cost to install 2 electric chargers, and could this cost, like once we get the final numbers, it's just a quote, it's just an estimate, and we start budgeting and be more methodical in the planning process to go electric. So consider it like a starting.
So I just want to touch on the life cycle piece. Like I think we, often forget because we're running internal combustion engines, but to me, like the life cycle applies to both vehicles. And when you look at, the uproar that has been going on for decades about the oil sands, the emissions there, the equity issues, whether it's human rights issues in Saudi Arabia, like to me, I wouldn't get so hooked on the life cycle analysis because I think you'd have to dig in pretty significantly on internal combustions as well. And I'm not sure you're going to see that much of a difference, if any, probably more likely to be positive because when you look at where the rare minerals are, at least from an equity basis and even from an emission standpoint, they're largely in countries with strong regulatory aspects versus, taking oil out of Nigeria, out of Saudi Arabia, out of Venezuela, or the tar sands. So I think you need as a group to kind of collectively agree that it's not one or the other, it's both. And there's probably significantly more issues with oil and gas extraction.
Let's add my point for it. So, we cannot, it is not an all or nothing when it comes to solving the climate crisis. It isn't all hands on deck. It isn't everything that we can possibly do. So if it is a little bit here, a little bit of active transportation, a little bit of, electrification, a little bit of hydrogen, energy efficiency, we have to use every single tool in our toolbox. And this is one of those things to consider at this stage of the story.
Yeah, just a few things to build on Travis's point. Actually,
EV policy is what I do most of my day. So on the life cycle piece, there have been studies, and you're exactly right in terms of the embodied carbon, that it is much greater in an internal combustion engine vehicle when you think about the cost. In addition, the EV technology is increasing every day. And so things like battery recycling, it's getting better. And so we'll only see that decrease. Is it perfect? No. But Emily, to your point, like it, you know, every little thing counts, right? And so just on that piece, and then on the idea that sort of the principle that we shouldn't be supporting applications from the city, I think, from my opinion, that's kind of changing the game after we've already started, right? Our terms of reference do outline how we should, like, it's fair game to submit this, right? And then to turn around and say, oh no, we don't really want you to, or we don't want to support that because you're the city. I just don't think that's fair. And we have this opportunity in July to change that, right? And so do I think, like, would I love for the city to not be submitting? Yeah, but the rules of the game set out that this is a completely fair and eligible application. So I think just on that point, you know, that's not a reason to not support. And then I think this final piece about, you know, it should be in the city budget. Again, this is a culture change. It's going to take time. It's going to take evidence to change people's minds and meet people where they're at. And so again, with these two charters, I think it's a big step in the right direction that hopefully next year we can make the case for it to be part of the capital budget. And so I think that culture change is a huge thing that we can do in this committee, and that spans city staff as well. So.
Sure. And you mentioned a few things that I think like they're very one-sided, and they're based in a very a position of privilege that is not shared by everybody in the city. And the vast majority of people aren't going to be able to afford electric vehicles. And we're talking about like combustion versus electric, and of course, we want to talk about the ethics of it. None of it's good, right? But I drive a vehicle the whole time. And so like I get it when we were talking the university books, the steel mill and it's you know emissions and all that. Like I use steel every day. I think probably all of us do in our lives. So like I get that argument. But in terms of the research being done, you know, of course it's going to be funded by people with an interest in seeing that these things move forward. But there are alternatives to that should be considered. Other types of combustion, for example, other types of batteries that don't require the rare minerals that require the cutting of massive amounts of forest. No matter what way you look at it, it's the same with the tar sands and the poisoning of the Athabasca River and like in terms of you're making an argument about culture change, and it's like we're too late for that. I don't make most people realize just how bad things are. So we can like argue that, oh, we'll make a culture change if we just get this EV thing and installed. And I'm neither here nor there, but it's going to happen either way. And it's good that the PUC is going to support it. But in terms of a culture change, it's like the information is 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, essentially as long as I've been alive, and the culture doesn't change. So say that this is going to change the culture, it's pretty kind of like I grew up poor. I don't know if other people grow up poor. That to me was a culture change that I made 10 years ago to say, I'm going to respond this way, and I'm going to share thousands of seeds with the people who can hopefully grow their own food. Because that might be a requirement someday. And yes, you gotta get people there, but you know, from an indigenous perspective, from the perspective where, you know, like, people have run a rickshaw over all the land. And then to say, oh, get them there, just give them a little bit of good stuff when we get there. Is a little bit, you know, trouble to my heart.
So much to think about in this conversation, certainly not easy. I'm worried about running out of time. We still have another I'm getting to you, Andre. I just wanted to bring that forward, that we have about 40 minutes left, and we still have the very important letter at the end, and we still have the other applications. So I want to make sure we have ample time for all of those things. I think everyone's had a chance to share their thoughts. Andre,
Yeah, the point.
just the last minute for you.
Thank you very much. I do think that we put a lot of thought into the ease of solving our problems, which is to me wrong-headed and diverting us from really what we need to pay attention. One thing that we haven't talked about is the land use component of the EV charging. Okay, so you have a parking spot and you have a charge. So let's assume that the city gets more and more cars, electric cars, then the car that parks in the EV station charges the car, and then the guy comes down, moves his car, so another car can go in that spot, or do we put a charging station on every parking spot? And if that's the case, we have already excessive parking in this community, way more, and now we're gonna have the cost of having a charging station on every parking spot. We are opening a can of worms here so big that I will not support this at all. I'm totally against it. And for the land use, from the environmental benefit, and also our dependence on automobility, like what is it that we want to solve here? If we continue to get the idea that you can get, a self-driving EV, that's even better. So now we have not one person in a car, we have no person driving around our car. We have all these streets, and that's the only point I want to make with this, and I won't support this. Thank you.
Okay. I think I was gonna talk about the fence, but I think the fence is really a moot point in all of this at this moment. Okay. So I still think what I wanted to say was matters in light of it, should something like this proceed, but I'm getting the sense that there's a lot of division here in terms of proceeding or not proceeding. So, and if I'm sensing what I think I'm sensing, if Mark cannot vote, then I think we're like split. Oh, no, we're not. I don't know what Nairi is thinking of doing. Travis.
So
And then I know Emily wants to say.
Yeah,
something, so you guys
I also
decide.
think, and I don't want to diminish anything that anybody's expressed here, but this group is voting based on GHG emissions reductions and the criteria of sustainability as laid out in terms of reference. Anything beyond that is outside of the scope of this group. So whether it's equity issues, whether broad social impacts, unfortunately, they're not part of the scope of this group when the group is evaluating these projects. So I appreciate that there's a lot of influence there, but otherwise we've got to go through that with every single project.
Fair, however, I think, well, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think there's I don't know if anybody's considering in terms of their thought process. The limited resources. Right? We know that if we approve all three of these projects tonight, this is just a fact, not trying to tell anybody what to do. It's just a fact. If we approve all three of these projects, the fund will be done unless there's some other funding that becomes available through surplus, not surplus, there's another word, I can't think of it. Reserve, thank you. So Emily.
I agree with Travis. I think, and Donna, really wonderful points for sure. Points that I hope we can expand upon, and again, not to jump the gun on the agenda item. One of the projects this committee is going to that it is recommending to council to do is to develop an environmental social governance policy that can guide this corporation in all of their operations to take things that have been brought up today into consideration, every aspect of this corporation does. The municipality is also that looks to provincial and federal government for direction on how we operate. And the Canadian federal government has mandated that all new vehicle sales by 2035 be non-fossil fuel emitting. So to implement infrastructure to help prepare us for that, that's the protein thing, is one of those pillars of this whole, one piece of this whole pie of bringing our emissions down. We aren't saying that we're going to convert 100% into electric. We're not saying we're going to install the charger for every vehicle. We're saying, let's try out two. Let's see if it works. You bring good points. Let's monitor. Let's see, like, is this going to even make a dent in our carbon emissions? If we go, we calculate, let's do it. But these are things that municipalities will have to adhere to on a go-forward basis. So with that, I'll turn it over to them for the vote.
I just want to read you something quickly, which is back to what Travis was saying, just to put it specifically for everybody. An eligible project may include GHG reductions, result in removal, reduction, or sequestration or mitigation of emissions. I'm picking and choosing irrelevant to this one. Increase energy efficiency, reduces consumption of energy, specifically fossil fuels in a community building. Those would be the two highlights that I see. There's a few others like active transportation, waste reduction, resilient ecosystems. Those would be projects that support reducing our community GHG emissions and reducing pollution, maintaining our natural environment, managing the use of natural resources in a way that ensures their availability for future generations. So that is the overarching umbrella and criteria by which all of you have to consider whether you are in favor of or not in favor of this particular proposal. So in order for us to proceed, I have to ask for a mover and a seconder to put a vote on the in front of everyone. So do I have someone to move and someone to second this application? So I have Tori to move, the Councilor Gardy to second. All right. So I got it right here. So the resolution is be it resolved that the Environmental Sustainability Committee supports the request for funding from the CDF Green Initiatives Program in the amount of $16,050 for the City of Sault Ste. Marie Community Development and Enterprise Services Department Civic Center Electric Vehicle Charging Project funding request and recommends that Council approves the request. All right. All in favor?
I think we need Nairi to.
We do.
Yeah.
All opposed?
Oh, was that opposed, Nairi, or in favor?
Sorry, my camera was delayed. It was in favor.
Okay. So the application is approved. Now I will make my comment about the fence. If I might so take the opportunity to do that, what I want to say is I'm surrounded by 3 vehicles charging stations where I work every day, and not one of them has a fence. Okay, so I think that the idea of building a fence should be really looked at. Yes, you have to clear the snow away, but let's not put any more stuff in front of it. If it was me, and I know it's probably not a very popular with some people opinion at this table right now, I would make that look like the coolest space in the world. I would be celebrating the fact, right? I understand we have differences of opinion, but I would make that thing shine. It would be not shine like, polish shine. I'm saying, why take the first freaking step in this transition, this culture change, this very important thing that by the time you get to the last letter, we really have to land home on and shroud it with an ugly fence. Okay, celebrate it, show it, say we're doing things differently. We have a different way of looking at things. Let's say the $850 or whatever it's going to be on the fence that's going to cost somebody to build it, and like make it look cool. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Moving on to the last application.
Not sitting on the fence. Wow.
For the Linitrax. Emily.
Great, so we're joined by Featherstone from the Lake Huron North Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. Thank you, Daniel, for your patience. So the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center, Lake Huron North Tracking the Flow project is a pilot initiative that seeks to install 8 Linitrax filters in stormwater drains at the intersection of Bay and D Street near the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library. Linitrax are a modular catch basin filter designed for placement inside any catch basin structure to prevent litter, microplastics, and other debris carried by stormwater from entering the storm drain system. The project seeks to raise awareness about plastic pollution in the Great Lakes and the city's efforts to address the issue of plastic pollution. The project will also involve a partnership with the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library by erecting an educational sign about how the Linitrax work, as well as a book display at the library through the library's Love Lakes project to create a display of books about lakes. Consultations with the city's area coordinator of wastewater, who unfortunately is here today, have taken place, and his public works team will install and empty the Linitrax as part of the project. The Innovation Center will work with the city to assess and measure debris collected in the Linitrax to evaluate the effectiveness of this project and prepare for possible expansion for future city stormwater drains. This project aligns with the improved water quality, healthy and resilient ecosystems, and waste reduction pillars of the agreement. Turn it over to you, Daniel. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. Part of the project will also be like sharing the project as we go on social media through Goose's and stuff like that to really raise awareness of the issue in the community and to hopefully get more people involved and aware of this issue and plastics in water.
Thank you, Daniel.
Questions? Audrey.
Do you have where else?
So it's been done in a few states in Ontario so far. The closest one I could find to Sault Ste. Marie is the city of Barrie, where they have in their downtown core to prevent basically the plastics from the downtown core from washing through the stormwater drains into Lake Simcoe. They've also been done in Kitchener-Waterloo and the city of London, but they only have the same winter climate as we have here. So I watched this pilot project here, so to see like how it's affected by snow melt and stuff like that.
Maybe Troy might have my next question. My understanding is that there's different things, different type of filters, if you wish, on the storm sewer discharge. So this is particularly designed to capture the plastic.
Yes.
And other solids.
Yes, other cells too. So like if leaves and were being washed down in the fall, they would also be captured by it. Currently it's estimated it takes about 6 months for them to fill up and have to be emptied, but we're currently planning to empty them every 3 months for the first 6 months of the project. So if we get them installed in July, we'll empty them in October and January to basically seal plastic water.
So I will have just a couple of questions because I understand. Okay, I have a friend of mine who's a toxicologist, she's got a PhD in physics, and she studies water pollution in Great Lakes. And I asked her, what is the number one source of water pollution? And it was the stuff that comes out of stormwater. So what I'm asking, I think this is the tip of the iceberg. And I think that they have technologies, and I think we're going to be aware of this too. They capture oils, capture a lot of this toxins that go in the river, because our river, the pollution in our river is coming from the stuff that the water comes from the sky that washes the stuff in the street that goes into the sanitary sewer, and plastic is one of them. And I don't believe that plastic is the most harmful one. What I would really like to see is even if done on a small scale basis, to have the plastic captured, but also capturing oils and other pollutants that, and even for measuring, it, I think we're really sticking ahead of this. And when we look at the impact of our auto dependency, like the roads we build and all the shit that comes off our cars ends up in the river, and that's the greatest source of pollution. That's just the thing, right? So I congratulate you. I support this 100%. I'd like to see it expand to capture other stuff, to raise awareness, for one, and two, to stop polluting the river.
For sure, yeah, thank you for your comments. That's great ideas. I know there are different filters and stuff you can put on these filter models. That can trap sediment and stuff like that. So if you have a big construction site going on, instead of all the sediment rushing straight into the river, and then that can basically flow of a river and covering important ecosystems like gravel spawn habitat for salmon, trout, sturgeon,
Yeah, sure.
and stuff like that. That's something that could definitely be experimented on in the future. But it costs more money, and I know that very limited how much money.
Like we're like the piece of oils, wash fluid, everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of assets that I can use for stormwater for sure. I think in the GTA, there's some road or streams in the basin in spring that you can salter in the ocean, just from all the roads, so just wash
Yeah,
out.
the road salt.
Yeah, so there's a lot of recommendations for sure. That's just one of the many. But it's a great start.
Other questions, Mark?
Yeah, I'm just curious, from a city perspective, is this then going to become an annual or a semi-annual maintenance type thing that's going to happen? Is it going to be part of the procedures set within the city instead of say, you know, we start to do this and it's a year, 2 years down the road?
So I'm really hoping that this continues. When I was talking to Conrad, his team said there's some big issues. I'm taking them every 6 months, which was where I really find in our when I was discussing maintenance and stuff with them. So with these eight, I think they're committed to having them monitor long term, and if the city decides that they want more installed, this pilot project will really give a good example of how often the empty water capturing and how much work it is for public works to go over and have things used on a high basis. For 6 months.
Other questions? Is there a tie-in between electricians and the drains that have the artwork on them that says this water goes to, and is there, that's just for you guys to think about, is there a way to like highlight that even more or use that idea of so that people realize not just like physically on the drain, the stormwater drains themselves, that something is there capturing that?
In the application, Daniel mentioned that it says aligned with the stormwater art project.
Okay, so I missed it.
The city worked on last year, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, one of the new caps is going to be installed at the library where there is that artwork of the woman and water. And then there's going to be a sign that is built at the library as well. So it does tie in to the city's stormwater art projects.
Perfect. Thought I missed that. Okay, anyone else's questions? Seeing none, need someone to move and second this application. Mark to move, Tobin to second. Let me read you. Where the heck did it go here? I lost it. So be it resolved that the Environmental Sustainability Committee supports the request for funding from the Green Initiatives Program in the amount of $6,975.62 for the Sioux Cape Marine Innovation Center, tracking the flow funding request and recommends the council approve the request. All in favor? Nairi? Yes, that's an all in favor. All right, thank you. That's carried. I think we have one item left on the two. We have two. The letter and the project. Okay, so Emily, you want to take us through the last two items?
Sure. Okay, so as you may recall, it's going to pull it up your screen. Now I'll share it with Nairish as well. Just going to share my screen. Nairi, let me know if you can see it, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Can you see my screen? Sort of?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, so back in April, we had a brainstorming session. Committee members shared short, like, ideas for what we want to do here today. Oh, Dan, you're free to go, by the way. You got, man. Just go in here. Thank you. We'll be in touch, Daniel. So we did a survey, and then I gathered up all the ideas and I put them into SurveyMonkey and I sent them out. And so we have prioritized 3 short-term priorities and 3 long-term priorities that have been put together in a letter to go to mayor and council as well as the city senior manager from this committee. There was a lot of good ideas that came forward through this brainstorming session. Certainly not all of them were, chosen or voted higher than others, but ultimately, I think this is a really good starting point. These are ideas that will really help, I think, shift this corporation from an operational level, help us really get towards that net zero emissions target. So thank you to the committee members for your ideas and for taking the time to vote. So as you can see in the letter, I have the agenda. You just have the agenda. Okay. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay. So our short-term priorities that were selected by the committee were: 1, make climate action a top priority in city's strategic plan update. 2, conduct an annual sustainability audit of the city's budget. So this would determine what is currently being spent to address emission mitigation. And analyze on an annual basis to measure improvements and increase accountability towards emission reduction efforts. And the 3rd priority is to require staff to have their climate impact statement on council reports reviewed by the sustainability coordinator. As it currently stands, city department leads, so finance, legal, and CAO review all corporate reports to council, and they must sign off on that report before it is approved at the council meeting. The new climate impact section on council reports, which was just initiated this year, is currently voluntary. So a mandatory review by the sustainability coordinator would encourage corporate-wide use of this section and increase awareness and consideration of the adoption of measures and projects that both mitigate and or adapt to climate change. So part of that educational shift and mandating all departments, not just those who are already on it, to actually start thinking about this. The long-term priorities selected by this committee were: 1, establish a corporate environmental social governance policy; 2, develop a green development standard; and 3, develop a corporate sustainable roads approach and indoor strategy. The language for this priority was finessed slightly based on my conversations with city staff because it needed to take more of a holistic approach. I think this is a good step in the right direction. I'm hopeful. And so we're here today for the committee to ask any questions or concerns about this letter. And then we'll move to resolution for the chair, if approved, to bring it to mayor and council as well as the team. So I'll open it up for any questions. We're about 15 minutes left for the meeting, so it's always rushed.
What do you think? What questions do you have? Nairi asked.
Oh, I already answered that.
Oh,
I'm just seeing it, your question now, Nairi.
Can you show the last paragraph?
The short term
You want to see this
or the long term?
It's in your
Uh,
package.
A little bit lower. That's number 3 then.
It's on page 47.
Do you want to see it?
You ready?
I was looking
Here,
for it.
here.
Okay,
Take mine.
all right. Thank you. I think Corey would be, I'd like to know, do you feel that, I think Emily needs more power. Because I think the department heads,
Andre, we gotta stick to the letter right now.
okay, but I mean, I just want to know that.
Because we all need to agree that this is the letter that's going to go. It says this is what we want you to approve.
That they're discussing. It's been drafted.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this on an annual basis.
Sure.
I didn't see the results of on this, because we voted, right?
Yeah, these are the results of the vote. Like these were the top 3 priorities. There were 9 short term, and I think there were 12 long
Give more, I
term.
get the results.
Yeah.
What is the breakdown?
Sure, I can send that out to you. Is the idea, that, I guess, what would be like, city council directs this committee to work with staff to do these things? Like, what would that like? So the scope of this task aligns to the terms of reference of this committee, which is on an annual basis to develop a list of priorities for council's consideration for the next year's budget. So we want council to take these priorities into consideration when they're establishing the budget, as well as consider them operation.
Okay,
Okay, okay, go ahead. Just in the third section, talking about the letter. The last. Okay, for the last sentence, for road design, consideration to limit congestion. In that neighborhood. Now. Interestingly, Jeff Speck is a urban planner, talking about congestion. And. It's not a bit weird, but congestion is required to limit congestion.
Andre,
So-
Andre, I'm sorry.
Don't
But
interrupt me, please.
no, because we have a limited time.
Well,
frame,
just
and
figure that out.
no, what I want you to do is weigh in on, are you happy with these? This is the result. These are the priorities. This is what we're going to suggest or ask, actually, we very clearly asked that these become priorities and this becomes parts of what is budgeted and what is actioned.
Sure, I get that.
Okay,
Would you ask to comment on the wording of the letter? So I'm trying to take comment on the wording of the letter.
okay. Go ahead.
I just did. Remove this limit congestion. Take that right out. You don't want to limit congestion. Congestion is the solution.
Well, that's
That's a fact.
I was gonna say, that's a doctrine or like a.
No, it's
theory,
not.
I guess.
It's not a doctrine.
Some people would say that, yes.
No,
I
no,
don't
it's
think-
not. I'm sorry, I disagree 100%. And if you want the proof, I'll show you later.
It's okay. I don't think that the intention was, is everybody comfortable with removing that from the letter?
Limit congestion, that's it.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
For road design, connect neighborhoods, encourage active transportation, et cetera, in that last sentence.
yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so we're gonna remove that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Andre?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mark?
No, I was just pointing out that Mary had there was a hand.
Oh.
Hand raised. I don't know if she wanted to comment on this also.
I don't know. Do you?
No,
Okay, Nairi?
So I'm supportive of the letter. I have three logistical questions. Does the letter get published publicly somewhere on the city website?
The letter will be sent to mayor and council from the chair of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. To my knowledge, it's already on the city's website as part of the agenda package for this committee.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just wondering the accountability piece. And so the implementation of this letter is, the council considers it when they're doing stuff, but does it also go into city employees? Like, I don't know if you guys have something like a professional development plan. At the MNRF, we do these PDPs every year. That's part, like you tell your manager what you're going to be doing for the year. So I'm just wondering, would that trickle into the PDP? Or if you have a PDP, if that would trickle into each staff's plan for their
So,
job.
The way that the corporate, so the first long-term priority policy, like creating that ESG policy, is written to have all staff sign off to ensure adoption. So that is designed for all staff to sign it off, or rather that priority. I'll have to get back to you on what those, like, if we have the MNR equivalent to like goals, et cetera, that would be something for Travis, who unfortunately is stepped away for another commitment. So I'll get back to you on that one.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
That would be based on the department and how they manage their staff
So
entirely.
it's specific to each department. So
Yes.
so the piece about this policy would be getting all city staff to sign off on it. But this letter, will have to see, you know, where direction is given from mayor and council.
And last question, so that leads to my, how do you report back on the progress made? Is it like, I guess, is there a second step in 6 months where you follow up with council and ask for progress, or like, that's all? Yeah.
I think that's a really good question. This is my first time working with this committee with the establishment of a letter like this. I think they'll see where it goes, because it is a priority of this committee to do on an annual basis. Understanding whether it was received, if there was any feedback, comments, will certainly be established as part of this committee's role. We will follow up to see if it went anywhere. We also have our annual sustainability report, which will speak to all sustainability efforts on the part of the city that we'll be doing on an annual basis. So perhaps some of these, if they are deemed to be looked at, will be reviewed in that.
So I'm just wondering if you could put a sentence in, you know, to revisit in 6 months or whatever aligns with, you know, other things going on, so that so there's a check-in established in the letter. And that's just a suggestion. I don't know if that makes sense, but just a suggestion.
The first step is getting it approved, and then after that, we can, we gotta put those other guidelines in place. Cool, all right, anybody else with questions? Seeing none, could I have someone that would be willing to move and to second, resolve that we support the submission of this climate action priority letter for council's 2024 budget consideration, and we recommend that the letter be sent to the mayor and council tomorrow, June 7th. That is moved by Andrew and seconded by Andre. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. And last but not least, Emily's going to talk about our 2023 project priorities. And we need some approval to proceed with those as part of our action as a committee in the balance of this year. Okay, I'm just sharing my screen for now. Okay, so there's captions on the screen. So if you have an agenda package, I encourage you to take a quick look at it. My agenda. We did the letters, so we're just talk about that. Okay, so in the brainstorming session, there were a series of projects that were identified. The top 3 projects that were selected by the committee, and again, your feedback, Andrew, I will send all of the results, the survey results as a PDF export to you very shortly. My apologies for missing out on that. So the top 3 projects selected by the committee are they're all over the place. So top is creating a community climate action communication strategy. 2 is revision of the Green Fund. And 3 is to invite, starting next month, every single department at the city to come and attend the Environmental Sustainability Committee to give a snapshot on what they're doing when it comes to climate action. You'll be given the portfolio, the directors will be attending in advance their information, and we'll ask that the committee come up with some questions in advance so that they're prepared. And look at it as like a spotlight series, if you will, on different departments in the city for the CSD, asking questions and to understand what they're doing from a climate adaptation and a climate mitigation standpoint. So these are the 3 projects that this committee will be working on for the rest of the year to complete these tasks. So for project number 1, which is the development of a climate communication strategy, we will be brainstorming for this, as well as the Green Fund application refresh at our next ESD meeting. So the agenda will be shared with you, but come with your ideas.
how we want the fund to change, and what are some things that we should be considering for the communications strategy. Feedback will be gathered and discussed in revised documentation at August meeting. And hopefully, if timelines go as planned, we'll bring that fund refresh proposal to council on September 18th, which requires council's final approval. Again, starting at our July meeting, so next month, we'll have a different city department head coming to speak at the committee meetings. And I will say that to the point of project number 1, which is the climate communication strategy, the city summer students are actually organizing a downtown business climate action spotlight series starting this summer. Very happy to see that. So they're going to be spotlighting what are some of our local businesses in the downtown core for environment. That one, we do have a resolution. These are the projects that were selected on and vote.
Okay, so looking for someone to move and to second that we, the ESC, will support and lead the implementation of 3 projects, which include the 3 things Emily mentioned, creating the climate action communication strategy, the revision of the fund, and the municipal department climate spotlight series. Going to move and someone to second. Or, sure. Just real quick, Andrew.
Yes,
Sorry.
it's gonna be really quick.
Thank
This
you.
is for the record, because there was a comment made, and I know it's somewhat related to this final push for this house, which I support, but today a comment made that to essentially vote within the parameters of what this committee sees as its mission and mandate. And I found that comment to be, like, for myself, like, very problematic, in the sense that, you know, for me personally, I will always go with my heart, no matter what committee I'm on, or no matter what place that I'm serving. And I don't think that it was meant to be personal, but in terms of what the mandate is, there's an absence of something in the mandate of the committee. And it's very clear that there's an absence of that. And we're trying different ways to approach that and get that, and that takes time and whatever. But me personally, it kind of felt like, oh, well, if you want to have an opinion, and it's not just an opinion, I'm a researcher and a scholar, then, you know, it has, like, you can't really have that because it has to be within the parameters of this committee. Let me just finish. Important that is in my heart. But for me, like, I will never do. So if that means that you'd rather not have this kind of voice in this space, that's fine. Like, I've got plenty of other things to do, and happy to serve in other places. But, like, I don't agree with that, and I will never follow it. So if that means that I probably can't serve, then that's okay with me. But just maybe let me know.
Yeah, and I just want to the point that you're addressing, Andrew, that has to do with the terms of reference for the green fund. And we are going to take that and we're going to tear it apart and we're going to build a brand new one. And I look forward to working with you, hearing your insights and the insights of every other member on this committee as we revise that. And that is one of the projects that we're going to start working on in July. And I welcome your feedback.
And that's because we've identified, we don't like the criteria. We want to change the criteria, but unfortunately, till we change it and we get it approved, that's the criteria that we have to make our decision.
So let's get going.
So that's exactly what we want to do. Let's change it. Thank you, Andrew. Emily, you've got a few minutes for your, to take us through the highlights of your staff update.
Okay, well, did we get a mover?
Oh, I apologize. I need someone to move and to second with regards to the project priorities. Tobin and Mark, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Now,
I'll just go through this quickly. Lots of activities. Lots of activities have been involved in the past couple of months. I'm proud to say that the city partnered with Innovation Center to deliver a commercial and industrial and incentive luncheon. Invited industry and local businesses to understand about different funding programs to help them reduce their electricity consumption. The city also participated in the Northern Ontario Youth Climate Action Summit. We had a great audience, high school students to understand what we're doing at the city with our climate change portfolio. And we engaged them in a climate action activity. The students also led a community cleanup in and around Bush Point. The city participated in partnership with the Sioux Naturalists for the City Nature Challenge. This is our very first year in this global challenge. Over 600 observations of 200 species were identified. And we also had a secondary activity with an elementary school class, grade 6 at Central Elementary School, to talk about biodiversity and partnership. We're continuing to strive forward with our World Bird Friendly City proclamation, and we celebrated World Finder's Birthday in partnership with that. We purchased our first electric Zamboni and second one has just been through. But we're through this week, so if you enjoy hiking, I encourage you to get outside and dust off with bikes. There is a form where we're tracking all of the folks who are out hiking work this week. The city has completed our community retrofit project feasibility study, and we are going to be applying for program design with council approval. I'm really excited to announce as well that the city received $200,000 to complete deep energy retrofit audits, or Cadillac audits, as I like to call them, Cadillac, for our top 6 emitting facilities. So these will provide us with a decent roadmap to identify low carbon energy performance. And we also launched our very first sustainability report last month, which highlights what we've done in the emissions reduction plan as far as implementation goes, as well as environmental sustainability. Thank you for your attention. Any questions? Real quick? Great.
Questions?
Yeah, that's great. Good news. Really good.
Okay, the next meeting, is it the July 4th or it's changing, correct?
We've got the votes for July 18th.
Okay,
I will send that out. If anyone has any conflicts, let me know. I did find out the Google poll. So if that works, we'll just work with everyone's schedule. Our first department has some conflicts on July 4th.
okay. So it's tentative, July, is it tentative or confirmed?
Tentative.
Tentative, July 18th at 4 o'clock. There's nothing further. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? This one happens really fast. Tobin and Corey, all in favor. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Nairi. Okay. Mind if it ends?